ahead of the Gauteng Premier's State of the Province address. Joining us is Chad Thomas. He's from IRS Forensic Investigations. Chad, a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming on. And who can forget, right, the advent of Panyaza, as they were eventually known, the Premier absorbing the Department of Community Safety into his department. At the time, he talked about, how the crime rate in the province keeps him up at night. Was that, in retrospect, a good move? And are we seeing the results?
A very good afternoon to you and the viewers, and thank you so much for inviting me on this afternoon. In anticipation of our conversation, as well as the State of the Province address later today, I read the Gauteng Department of Community Safety annual report for 2023-2024, just to refresh my memory of what was promised. And in the forward by the Premier, he says that the integration of technology has brought a comprehensive approach to combating crime, particularly in townships, informal settlements and hostels. He speaks about the provincial government implementing e-policing solutions, including the rollout of the e-panic button system, the installation of CCTV cameras, and of course the deployment of helicopters and the very controversial Gauteng traffic wardens. He also talks about the oversight from a provincial perspective, where they visited 145 police stations and have implemented 144 victim-friendly rooms to prevent secondary victimization of survivors of GBV and femicide. All of these things sound very good and look very good on paper, but I'm keen to hear from his perspective whether he believes these initiatives have worked. Listening to the insert at the beginning, where you've interviewed people that have been employed as a result of the rollout of the Gauteng Traffic Warden program, it's great to hear that people have been given an opportunity for employment. But we must remember it was a stop-start program. There was issues with the training in the beginning. Then they decided to have the military intervene and the military to train. We had a lot of the vehicles that were given to these members written off in a very short space of time. They weren't armed, yet they were expected to respond to crimes. They were in high-profile vehicles, blue lights and sirens, BMWs. But how do you respond to a crime if you're not armed? So I commend the Premier for creating work opportunities. I just think the money could have been well spent in other aspects of the collaborative issues.
And I want to get to the issue of, changing the lives of these young people through the creation of these positions, which was the angle that our reporter took, speaking to these young people who say they've become beacons of hope in their own communities, other young people wanting to turn their lives around and also get on the right track. Before we get there, Chad, I want to just talk to you about some of the things that the Premier outlined when he absorbed the Community Safety Department into his department. So e-policing, CCTV, panic buttons, traffic wardens, victim-friendly rooms for people who have been victims of gender-based violence, in some cases femicide. Did the Premier follow up on all of these promises that he made at the time? Do we have all of these initiatives in place as you and I are talking now?
According to his report that came out in December of 2024, which was the annual report for the 2023-2024 period, he states that they've established 144 victim-friendly rooms to prevent the secondary victimization of survivors of gender-based violence and femicide. He speaks to the oversight in respect of visiting different police stations, as well as the collaboration that's been taking place between his department and others that are involved in the fight against crime, both public sector and private sector. We all know that CCTVs work exceptionally well. They're both proactive as well as reactive. They're also good from an evidentiary perspective. And we also know that the rollout of the so-called panic buttons would be able to help in the long term. We haven't seen statistics that have accurately shown whether the system is working. We don't have case studies of individuals that say that they've been issued with these panic buttons, they've had an incident, and how the response was to that. So we're very interested in hearing that this evening. Having the additional helicopters as an eye in the sky and in support of other crime prevention organizations and law enforcement is great. And if the Gauteng traffic wardens or crime prevention wardens, whatever one wants to call them, are effectively utilized as force multipliers, as perimeter security, or to assist in search and seizure operations, etc., then we're going to see a marked difference. And like I mentioned at the outset, I'm very glad that these employment opportunities have been created. But this shouldn't be a project just for the creation of employment. It should also be a project to help stop or at least prevent and be able to react to crime, which is impacting on all of our citizens in a province that has the largest population within South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics are the missing part of this puzzle, right? What we need are those numbers to tell us what the situation was in various sectors of crime before these initiatives by the Premier, and then whether we have actually seen any tangible results since then.
That's 100%. And I do believe that the Premier is doing this with the right intentions. A lot of people have been dismissive of the creation, for example, of the crime warden program, saying that it was to create employment and to bring more votes for the national election. But I think people are misguided. I think we're seeing a government that is now taking crime exceptionally seriously, is becoming victim-centric, and seems to be doing exactly what they say they're going to do. How successful these projects are going to be, we need to know. How successful they intend to be can only be measured through their successes. But at least they've embraced the fact that we need this digital support, and we also need more boots on the ground.
And of course, insofar as the state of the province is concerned, it's not just about our crime numbers or our crime-fighting initiatives. It's also about failures in local government and in the three big metros in Gauteng. The Auditor General's report from last year revealing significant financial mismanagement, an increase in unauthorized, irregular and fruitless expenditure. For people living in Johannesburg, the city of gold, right, is what we were once known as, but the roads, the state of service delivery, our water infrastructure, our healthcare, public healthcare, the list goes on and on. It tells a completely different story.
It does, and it is of course very concerning, because if one looks at the metros and one looks at the authority vested in them in terms of bylaws, they should be enforcing those bylaws. They have the necessary capacity in terms of the metro police departments. We're seeing that this has been rolled out from Ekurhuleni to Tshwane to Johannesburg. We're now also having it in Mogale. So we've got 4 major metros within Gauteng that are suffering serious urban degradation as a result of urbanization. We haven't been able to keep abreast of these massive changes and the influx of persons, the hijacked buildings, the state of the infrastructure. Yet we have these local policing organizations that are administered by the metropolitans themselves that should be enforcing the bylaws, should be there not just as force multipliers to SAPS, but actually taking up a far bigger role. And then, of course, we've also got the Gauteng Traffic Services, which is an instrumental organization in respect of keeping our highways safe, as well as saturation projects. So we need to see more input from a provincial and from a local perspective, and we can't just rely on the fact that SAPS is the lead law enforcement agency in South Africa. Capacity and resources have been given to local government, and local government has to make sure that there's a return on the investment. We see all the cars, we see all the uniforms, but we are not seeing the results that we expected.
Yeah, we're going to hope to hear quite a lot of detail on these various issues from Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi when he delivers his State of the Province address. Chad Thomas, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for giving us those insights. Chad is with IRS Forensic Investigations.